Israel is the cradle of our Judeo-Christian civilization, the only country in the Middle East sharing our values, a beacon of light in a sea of Islamic darkness. And as I tell everywhere in the world where I speak, if Israel falls, the West falls. And if it falls, we will be next. So Israel, as a matter of fact, is fighting our fight. And we should therefore thank them and support them. Israel is in the front line of our civilization, and we will never give it up. And please don't be fooled. The Israeli-Palestinian problem is not about land. It's about ideology. So the solution can never be to return Jewish land to Arabs. Let me tell you that they won't stop fighting until the whole land, from the River Jordan to the Mediterranean, is Islamic. And let's also stop talking about a two-state solution as well, because it already exists. Israel is the Jewish state and Jordan is the Palestinian state. My friends, not only Israel, but we too are facing an existential problem today. Islam indeed is threatening our very existence as free nations. And we must act. We must warn the people. Because if the resolute and urgent action that is urgently needed fails to materialize, then in another 50 years from now, Europe's Christians, Jews and atheists will be dwarfed by the followers of Islam. According to Eurostat, the Statistical Office of the European Union, the year 2015 was the first time ever in recorded history, the first time ever, that the number of babies born in the European Union was lower than the number of the persons who died. But here's the thing. The total population did not decline. It went up with a couple of million. And you know why? It went up because of immigration. So what we are witnessing is this. It is the substitution of the population of Europe. The substitution by immigration. Europe is in the middle of a process of population replacement, a process of colonization. Its nations turned into provinces of Africa and Arabia. And the consequences will be devastating, because the bulk of the massive flow of immigrants replacing the indigenous people in Europe today are Islamic. Look at some figures. According to the Central Council of Muslims in Germany, at least 80% of the 1.3 million newcomers in Germany only in the years 2015 and 2016 are Islamic. Germany is becoming Germanistan. My own Holland is becoming Hollandistan. Europe is becoming, as my friend Bad Yeor, who I respect and met many times, said and wrote a book about, will become Eurabia. Will our women still be safe in the streets 20 years from now? In many streets, they are already unsafe today. How long will it take before Sharia law is introduced here? In the UK, Sharia courts already exist today. How long before the first cathedral is turned into a mosque? The first priest was already butchered in a French church last year. These are all the questions we must ask ourselves. But not one single European government dares to address these existential questions. They worry about gender issues or climate change. That is what they are worried about. But they will soon experience the Islamic winter if they continue like this. So what can we do? First of all, face the facts. Be honest about the facts. As the great Winston Churchill said, facts are better than dreams. And it's time to stop dreaming of a non-existent peaceful Islam. It is time to stop behaving like the cultural relativists who opened their mind so wide that their brains fell out. It is time to finally end tolerating the intolerable. The West also urgently needs to recognize that it's not just terrorism which is the problem, that it's Islam itself that is the problem, that it's an ideology, that Islam is an ideology of submission, of hate, of violence, and that terrorism is just a tool. But the goal of Islam, ladies and gentlemen, the goal of Islam is conquest. And this goal is also served through population replacement. We must not just fight terrorism, we must have to stop the population substitution. Who could have imagined in 2010, when the Islamic population in, for instance, Germany was 4.8 million, that barely 6 years later there would be 1.5 million more, 6.3 million. Just 6% of the population to almost 8% of the German population in just half a decade. That is the real legacy of Angela Merkel. The Germans are collectively abolishing themselves, committing suicide. And according to a recently leaked German government report, the country leaders intend to take in 300,000 migrants annually for the next 40 years. And the document reveals that in order to keep the current size of the government of the German population stable, the German government is counting on permanent mass immigration. And let me tell you what that means. That means that with most of the immigrants, as I told you before, coming from the Islamic world, the Islamic population in Germany will jump to more than 25% by 2060. More than 25%. And if that happens, it is bye-bye to the land of Bach and Beethoven, down the drain with Kant and Schiller. And the elites in France, the Netherlands, Britain, Sweden, and other European nations are equally irresponsible and insane. They have allowed 1.5 million immigrants to enter Western Europe since 2015. And the European Union is facilitating, not stopping, but facilitating the process of population replacement. And how did it happen? Dennis Prager said some very interesting thing about identity. And this is the thing that happened in Europe. The beginning of the European Union in the 50s, 57, was a kind of institution that was working on economical cooperation, on an internal market where all the countries could benefit. And later it became a political project. And national sovereignties were transferred to what we call Brussels, to the superstate of the European Union. And the sole aim of this, what later became the political union, was to rob the nation states of Europe of their national identity. To rob them of their identity. And that happened. And when people don't know what their identity is, when people don't know who they don't know what they are not either. So they did not complain until not too long ago when immigrants came, when the whole world changed. And that is why we have to leave the European Union. I believe that any democracy, that you can only have a democracy within a nation state. And a nation state needs an identity, needs a national flag to rally about, needs a culture that is dominant, an own culture that people respect and want to have. Like I said, Dennis Prager said it probably better than I did. The open border policy imposed by the European Union on its member states prevent today our countries to control their own borders, because we also transferred our right to allow who we let enter in our homeland to Brussels. And Brussels doesn't care. They only want more instead of less Islamic immigration. And the EU Court of Justice and the European Human Rights Courts dismiss sovereign laws of member states and trample on the rights to approve who enter our countries. Even yesterday, we saw once again an appalling example of this. The European Human Rights Court ruled yesterday that Germany, you will not believe it, is not allowed to expel a dangerous foreign terrorist belonging to the Islamic State. It's unbelievable, but it's true. So it's time not only to leave the European Union, but to get rid of those courts. Abolish all the international human rights courts. They have proven that they do not respect the basic rights of ordinary citizens, the rights of safety, maybe the most important right of all.